Okay, I'm going to show you guys some of these questions about factoring a situation that we call difference of squares. Difference of squares. So what this means, difference is the fancy math word for subtraction of two things that are squared. So I'm starting with 25 to show you where this pattern comes from. And all I've done so far is I rewrote it. Notice I'm missing, for standard form, I'm missing that bx term, so I just did x squared plus 0x minus 9. And if I was to do my glasses step, multiply those together, what multiplies to negative 9 but adds to 0? Oh, that's 3 and negative 3. If you look, my a value is 1, which means I can use the shortcut, so I have x plus 3 and x minus 3, and that's it. That's all it is for factoring. So the shortcut with difference of squares, if you notice, like I could do that on any of these, but what I want you to be noticing is that this first term is always the square root of that one, and the second one is always the square root of the second term. But one had to be plus and one had to be minus because when we factored it, it needed to cancel out to 0. Negative 3 cancels out to 0. And that's what multiplies to the negative 9, 3 times negative 3. And so we can only use this shortcut of taking the square root if it is a difference of squares, meaning there's a subtraction. So for example, I could do something like 24, and I get 3a plus 4 and 3a minus 4. And that's all it is. Same with 20, oh no, 27 is different. 26, I mean, a few of these are different for a few different reasons. We'll come back to 26. Let's go down to 29. If I look at 29, it's still a minus, and so I'm still taking a square root. And it does not matter that root 13, well, 13 doesn't have a nice square root, but that's okay because it's just going to be x plus square root 13, x minus square root 13. So that's all it is. So now I'm going to look at a few other ideas here. Some things you want to watch out for. Look for a GCF first. I noticed there's a GCF of 4, and so I'd want to factor out the 4. And then you would keep factoring from there using our little square root funness. So the same rules of looking for a GCF still apply. Okay, if I look at 27, the difference here, this one is not written as a difference. I need subtraction to use this rule. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to outsmart math here and say, well, I know that addition is the same if you subtract a negative. Because now I have the difference, and I can still square root, and I can say, okay, the square root of 4k squared is 2k, so I know I'm going to have 2k. But what's the square root of negative 9? Oh, that's 3i. So plus 3i minus 3i. So it's legit the same thing, but now we have an I there. 26. I had a few people ask me about this one in class because, wait a second, those aren't pretty squares. Well, what's the first thing we look for when we factor? A GCF. I noticed both of those are divisible by 2. So I get 25a squared plus 1. And once again, I'm going to outsmart math here, and I'm going to write that as subtracting a negative. And I get 2 times 5a plus square root of negative 1. That's just 1i. So I'm just going to leave it as I. 5a minus I. You just do that for this whole page.